Lyssandra Vale stepped out of the Alpha King's private bedroom just before dawn wearing Kael Arden's white linen shirt. Evelyne stopped halfway down the royal corridor. She had been carrying 2 sealed border reports beneath one arm. One slid free and struck the marble floor with a soft slap. Lyssandra froze. Her dark hair was tangled around her shoulders. Her bare feet made no sound against the stone. Kael's scent, cedar, smoke, and the unmistakable heat of a recently awakened mate clung to her skin. There was no explanation Evelyne needed. 7 years ago, Lyssandra had been declared dead. Last night, she had apparently been alive enough to sleep with Evelyne's husband. "Evelyne," Lyssandra whispered. Evelyne bent, picked up the fallen report, and carefully aligned it with the other. "Move." Lyssandra flinched aside. Evelyne entered the bedroom. Kael stood beside the bed, pulling on black trousers. His face changed the moment he saw her. Not confusion, not innocence. Fear that hurt more than anything else. "Evelyne." She looked at the rumpled sheets. One wine glass lay broken beside the fireplace. Lyssandra's blue dress had been dropped near the foot of the bed. Kael took one step toward her. "Let me explain. Did you know it was her?" His mouth tightened. "Of course I knew." Evelyne nodded once. "Were you drugged?" "No." "Compelled?" "No, but then there's nothing complicated about it." Kael rubbed both hands over his face. He had commanded armies without hesitation, sentenced traitors without blinking, and faced 3 alpha rebellions from the same obsidian throne. Now he could not meet his mate's eyes. "She came back after 7 years, Eve. I watched them bury what I thought was left of her. Last night you remembered loving her." His silence answered. The mate bond twisted beneath Evelyne's ribs. Her wolf recoiled so violently she almost lost her breath, but her expression remained still. Kael moved closer. "It was one night. That did it. Not the scent. Not the shirt. Not even the bed. Those 4 words. One night, as though betrayal became smaller when measured in hours." Evelyne slowly removed the silver Luna ring from her left hand. Kael's eyes dropped to it. "No." She placed it on the bedside table. "Evelyne, don't." She reached inside the border reports and withdrew a folded parchment carrying the royal legal seal. Kael recognized it instantly. Mate severance petition. His jaw hardened. "You prepared that already?" "No." "Then where did you get it?" "Every Luna should know the laws that govern her own bond." She signed her name with the pen beside his bed. Kael stared at the ink. "You cannot sever 5 years because I made one mistake." Evelyne finally looked directly at him. "You didn't trip and fall into her bed, Kael." His face went rigid. Outside the doorway, Lyssandra stood silently, with tears gathering in her eyes. Evelyne saw her. There was something strange in the woman's fear. Not triumph, not guilt alone, terror. But Evelyne had no strength left to investigate another woman's secrets while standing inside the ruins of her marriage. She handed Kael the severance paper. "You told me the dead had no claim on our marriage." "They don't." Evelyne glanced toward the doorway. "Apparently they only need a bedroom." Kael caught her wrist as she turned. The bond surged between them, hot enough to make both of them inhale sharply. "Stay." It was not an alpha command. That almost made it worse. Evelyne looked at his hand until he released her. "You knew she was alive last night." Kael swallowed. "And you knew I was alive too." She walked out. 3 hours later, Kael discovered Evelyne's wardrobe, half empty. Her military maps were gone. Her personal ledgers were gone. The Luna ring remained beside his bed. Evelyne herself had vanished. Then Beta Mason found something outside the throne room. A cradle, dark ash wood, old craftsmanship. Silver thread wound tightly around the handles. Royal wax sealed the lid. Kael stared at it, blood draining from his face. Only one ancient ceremony used a sealed cradle inside Crownfang Palace. Heir's sanctuary. "Open it," Kael ordered. Mason tried. The seal burned his fingers. Kael shoved him aside and pressed his own palm against the wax. The cradle rejected him. A thin line of blood appeared across the Alpha King's hand. Then letters slowly surfaced beneath the blackened seal. 3 words. Kael stopped breathing. "Protect the Heir." By noon, Evelyne could no longer feel the warmth of Crownfang Palace behind her. Only the pain. It began as pressure beneath her ribs, dull and manageable. Then the carriage crossed the first territorial marker, and the mate bond pulled tight enough to make her fold forward. Her hand shot to the edge of the seat. The coachman glanced back through the narrow opening. "My lady? Keep moving." Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. Rain tapped steadily against the carriage roof. Beyond the fogged window, pine forests blurred into gray streaks. Every mile placed more distance between Evelyne and Kael. Every mile punished her for it. The bond did not care who had betrayed whom. It only knew separation. Another spasm hit. Evelyne clenched her jaw until the muscles in her face ached. A metallic taste filled her mouth where she had bitten the inside of her cheek. Her wolf paced inside her, agitated, confused, reaching instinctively toward the mate who had broken them. No. Evelyne pressed one palm against her sternum. She would not turn around because her body missed a man her mind could no longer trust. Across the kingdom, Kael stood over the sealed cradle in his private council room. The ashwood lid had not moved. Neither had the silver thread. Beta Mason watched from several feet away, his burned fingers wrapped in white cloth. Kael had summoned 3 royal archivists, 2 healers, and the oldest keeper of law in Crownfang. None had been able to open it. The keeper, an 80-year-old wolf named Silas, leaned heavily over the cradle. Hair sanctuary predates the Crownfang throne. Kael's patience thinned. "I know the history." "Then you know this seal does not protect objects." Silas looked up. "It protects claims." Kael went still. Mason noticed. "What kind of claims?" "Blood, custody, succession." Kael stared at the words burned into the wax. "Protect the heir." His first thought had been impossible. Evelyne had never told him she was pregnant. But what if she had known? What if she had been carrying his child and left before he could? His chest tightened. "Find her." Mason hesitated. "We already have trackers heading south." "Send more." "My king, if she filed for severance and crossed neutral ground." "I said find her." The alpha command vibrated through the room. Everyone fell silent. Kael looked down at the cradle again. For the first time since Lyssandra had returned, fear outweighed confusion. Back in the carriage, Evelyne opened the small leather case, resting beside her. Inside lay only 4 things: a folded map, 2 silver coins, a border knife, and the Luna ring. She had taken it after all, not because she wanted it, because leaving an ancestral royal object inside the palace could allow council lawyers to claim she had formally abandoned all Luna standing before a severance hearing. Even now, betrayed and half-sick, she was still thinking 3 moves ahead. That realization almost made her laugh. Instead, tears finally burned behind her eyes. She blinked once, twice. One escaped anyway. It slid down her cheek silently. Evelyne wiped it away with irritation. 5 years. 5 winters beside Kael. 5 years of treaties, funerals, rebellions, border disputes, nights when he came back bleeding and let only her touch him. 5 years of believing she had not replaced Lyssandra, that she had built something different, something real. Her fingers closed around the ring. She remembered the first winter after their mating ceremony. Kael had stood beside the frozen lake, his hands around hers, and told her there would never be ghosts between them. "The past is buried," he had said. She had believed him. Now Lyssandra had walked out of his bedroom, wearing his shirt. The memory struck harder than the bond pain. Evelyne wrapped the ring in a square of dark cloth and tied it shut. She did not throw it from the carriage. She would not make decisions for spectacle. The ring was evidence now, nothing more. The coach suddenly slowed. Evelyne lifted her head. "Why are we stopping?" The driver opened the small panel. "Checkpoint ahead." Her pulse sharpened. "What checkpoint?" "Royal Patrol." Evelyne pulled the curtain aside. Through the rain, 4 mounted Crownfang trackers waded across the road. Her stomach dropped. Kael had moved faster than she expected. The lead rider wore the black cloak of royal pursuit. Tracker, Commander Elias Ward. Evelyne knew him well. She had personally recommended him for promotion 2 years ago. The carriage stopped. Elias dismounted. "My lady, do not call me that." His eyes flickered. "Luna Evelyne, by order of Alpha King Kael, you are requested to return to Crownfang Palace." "Requested?" Elias looked uncomfortable. "That is the wording." Evelyne almost smiled. Kael knew better than to issue a formal arrest order, not after she had filed severance. "What happens if I refuse?" Elias did not answer quickly enough. That was answer enough. Evelyne opened the carriage door and stepped into the rain. Cold water soaked her hair within seconds. "Commander, under Article 9 of Mate Severance Law, I am entitled to leave Crown territory until the petition is reviewed." Elias lowered his voice. The king believes there may be an heir involved. There it was. The cradle. Evelyne's face remained still. He believes many things when he is frightened. You know what was left at the palace? Yes. That surprised him. Then tell me what it means. No, Evelyne. You were sent to bring me back, not interrogate me. Elias looked behind her carriage, then toward the southern road. You cannot outrun the royal guard. I do not intend to. A fresh wave of bond pain slammed through her. For one terrible second her knees weakened. Elias stepped forward. She raised one hand. Don't. He stopped. Evelyne breathed through the pain until her vision cleared. Then she looked at the road sign half hidden in rain. South led toward the human settlements. The obvious route, Kael would cover it heavily. East led toward the Blackwater ravines and, beyond them, Iron Border. Dangerous terrain. Old enemy territory. Exactly the place Kael would assume she would never choose. Evelyne turned to the coachman. You're dismissed. He stared. My lady? Take the carriage south. Elias frowned. Evelyne pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. Then she stepped off the road and onto the narrow eastern trail. Where are you going? Elias called after her. She did not look back. Somewhere your king cannot order me home. Thunder rolled above the trees. Behind her, the royal trackers remained on the road. Ahead, the forest grew darker. And miles away, inside Crownfang Palace, Kael pressed his bleeding palm against the sealed cradle one more time. This time, the wax did not burn him. It cracked. Just once. A thin line split through the royal seal. Kael froze. Beneath it, something moved inside the cradle. And Evelyne was already walking toward the one border Kael had no legal right to cross. By dusk, the rain had turned the eastern trail into black mud. Evelyne had abandoned the road hours ago. She moved through the forest instead, keeping to the higher ground where exposed roots gave her better footing and the pine canopy broke the rain into a steady cold drip. Her cloak clung heavily to her shoulders. Every few minutes, she stopped and listened. No voices, no wolfbeats, no howls. That did not mean Kael's trackers were gone. It meant they were good. Evelyne crouched beside a shallow stream and dipped both hands into the icy water. She rubbed wet earth over the hem of her cloak, then crushed wild mint between her palms and worked it into the leather strap of her satchel. Scent disruption, a trick border scouts used when moving through hostile territory. Kael had once teased her for insisting every Luna should understand military tracking. She almost smiled at the memory. Almost. Then the bond tightened. Pain drove straight through her chest. Evelyne gasped and dropped to one knee. Her palm struck wet stone. For several seconds, she could hear nothing but her own pulse. Kael, somewhere west of her, he was angry. The mate bond carried emotion badly at this distance, but not badly enough. Heat, fear, possession. Her wolf responded before Evelyne could stop it, turning instinctively toward Crownfang. No, she forced herself upright. Water ran from her hair into her eyes. You do not get to miss him more than I do. The words were meant for her wolf. They hurt anyway. She crossed the stream. 3 miles later, the terrain changed. The pines thinned. Black rock pushed through the soil in long, jagged shelves, and the ground dropped sharply toward the Blackwater Gorge. Evelyne stopped at the edge. Below her, the river crashed through a narrow ravine, swollen by rain and white with foam. The normal eastern crossing lay 2 miles north. Too obvious. Kael would know that. She looked instead at the old military footbridge ahead. Half-rotted planks. One rope railing missing. Wonderful. Evelyne tightened the strap across her chest and stepped onto it. The bridge groaned. Wind rushed through the gorge hard enough to make it sway. She kept her eyes on the opposite side. One step, then another. Halfway across, the mate bond struck again. Harder. Her vision flashed white. The world tilted. Evelyne grabbed the remaining rope with both hands. A plank snapped beneath her right boot. Her leg dropped through. She slammed against the bridge, breath exploding from her lungs. For one terrifying second, there was nothing beneath her but river. Her fingers slipped. One, then another. She could almost hear Kael's voice. Stay. Not a command. Worse, a plea. Evelyne gritted her teeth and hooked her elbow around the rope. No. She dragged her leg free. Wood tore through her trouser fabric and sliced the side of her calf. Warm blood, mixed with rain. She pulled herself flat onto the bridge, breathing hard. The bond throbbed inside her like a second wound. She allowed herself exactly 5 seconds. Then she crawled. When she reached the opposite side, Evelyne rolled onto solid ground and stared up at the darkening sky. A laugh escaped her. Small, breathless, completely humorless. Excellent route selection. The sarcasm was enough to get her moving again. She tore a strip from the lining of her cloak and wrapped her calf tightly. No fracture. Deep cut. Manageable. The iron border lay less than 6 miles ahead. She did not make 5. A howl rolled through the trees. Low, close. Evelyne stopped. Another answered from the north. Then one from behind her. Iron Crest Patrol. She slowly raised both hands away from her body. 3 massive wolves emerged between the black trunks. Gray, brown, one nearly silver. They spread out with practiced discipline. Not rogues. Soldiers. The silver wolf shifted first. Bones cracked. Muscle reshaped. A broad-shouldered man rose from the forest floor and pulled a dark coat around himself without taking his eyes off her. Captain Jude Mercer. Evelyne knew the face. He had sat across from her during border negotiations 3 years earlier and objected to nearly every clause she proposed. His stare dropped to her injured leg. Then, to the faint royal embroidery, still visible beneath her mud-stained cloak. His expression changed. Luna Arden. Evelyne's mouth tightened. Not for much longer. Jude looked toward the wolves beside him. Neither moved. You crossed Blackwater alone? Yes. That bridge is condemned. I noticed. His eyes narrowed. Why are you in Ironcrest territory? I am requesting sanctuary. Jude's face became still. The wolves behind him shifted uneasily. You understand what you're asking. Article 4 of the Border Sanctuary Accords. His expression hardened. Those accords were written for political refugees. They were written for any bonded wolf fleeing an unlawful claim while awaiting formal judgment. Jude stared at her. Evelyne met his gaze. I wrote the clause. That landed. One of the wolves behind him gave a quiet huff that might have been amusement. Jude did not smile. Alpha Ronin will decide whether it applies. Then take me to him. You're bleeding. I'm aware. Another howl sounded farther west. Jude's head snapped toward it. His face changed instantly. Crownfang. Evelyne felt the air leave her lungs. Kael's trackers had crossed farther east than expected. Jude looked back at her. If they enter another mile, they violate the treaty. They know. Then why would they risk it? Evelyne said nothing. Jude looked at her more carefully, at the exhaustion beneath her eyes, at the blood soaking through the makeshift bandage, at the trembling in her left hand that she could no longer completely hide. His expression lost some of its suspicion. Because of you. No. She looked west, toward the unseen men, following her. Because their king still thinks wanting something makes it his. Jude shifted back into wolf form. The others closed around Evelyne in a protective formation. Not trust. Procedure? She accepted the distinction. They moved through Ironcrest territory quickly. By full dark, torchlight appeared between the trees. Ironcrest Keep rose from the ridge ahead, built into black stone rather than sitting on top of it. Evelyne had seen sketches. She had never entered. The gates opened. Warriors lined the inner courtyard. At the top of the broad stone steps stood a man in a charcoal coat. Alpha Ronin Blackridge, 41, tall, still, the same severe face Evelyne remembered from 3 years ago. He did not hurry down to greet her. He waited until she climbed the steps herself. His eyes moved briefly to her wounded calf, then to her face. Evelyne Arden, Ronin. No titles. That seemed to interest him. You crossed into my territory, with Crownfang trackers behind you. Yes, you are either very brave or very inconvenient. Those are not mutually exclusive. A faint shift touched one corner of his mouth. Then it vanished. Come inside. The war room smelled of smoke, leather, and old paper. Ronin walked to the central table. A single document had already been placed there. He turned it toward her. Evelyne recognized the seal immediately. Her own, 3 years earlier. The Iron Border Peace Accord. Ronin rested 2 fingers on the page. You wrote the law you're using to ask me for sanctuary. Yes, and you expect me to honor it against your own mate. Evelyne looked down at the treaty, then back at him. I expect you to honor it because you signed it. For the first time that night, Ronan smiled. Not warmly. Respectfully. Good. He pulled out the chair opposite him. Then let's find out whether your own words can save you. Evelyne sought. Outside, another distant crown-fang howl crossed the mountains. Ronan's smile disappeared. He looked toward the door. They're closer than they should be. Evelyne's hand tightened around the edge of the table. Ronan tapped the old treaty once. And if Kael crosses this border for you, he won't be coming as your mate. He'll be coming as an invading king. The Ironcrest war room remained lit long after midnight. Rain struck the narrow windows in hard bursts, driven sideways by mountain wind. A fire burned low in the stone hearth, but the room still felt cold. Evelyne sat at the long strategy table with her injured leg stretched beneath the chair. A healer had cleaned the cut across her calf, stitched it, and ordered her to rest. She had ignored the last instruction. Across from her, Alpha Ronan Blackridge studied the border peace accord she had written 3 years earlier. He turned one page, then another. You left yourself very little room. Evelyne looked up. For what? Sanctuary. His voice was calm, almost conversational. You wrote Article 4 to prevent political abuse. The applicant must prove that returning to their original territory creates a credible legal or physical threat. My mate violated his oath. That proves betrayal. Ronan tapped the parchment. Not danger. Evelyne's jaw tightened. Outside the chamber, boots moved rapidly through the corridor. Ironcrest warriors had doubled the watch since Crownfang trackers were detected near the boundary. Ronan noticed her expression. You expected me to open the gates because Kael hurt you. No. Good. He leaned back. Because I won't. The words cut sharper than Evelyne expected. Not because she wanted pity. Because she was exhausted. She had crossed a collapsing bridge, bled through her clothing, endured hours of mate bond pain, and reached the one territory Kael could not legally control. Now she had to prove she deserved to remain there. Again, her hands curled slowly beneath the table. Ronan saw it. He did not soften. Your king could accuse me of abducting his Luna. I came willingly. His council could argue your severance has not been approved. They probably will. Then give me a reason to risk war. Evelyne held his stare. For one dangerous second, anger rose hot behind her ribs. She wanted to tell him she had kept 6 packs from starving through 2 winters, that she had prevented 3 border wars without drawing a sword, that half the treaties protecting Ironcrest carried language she had negotiated herself. She was tired of having to produce evidence of her worth like a merchant counting coins, but she knew exactly what Ronan was doing. He was not humiliating her. He was testing whether pain had made her careless. So Evelyne took a breath. Kael sent royal pursuit after me before my severance hearing. Ronan's eyes sharpened. Continue. He used no arrest warrant, no council order, no criminal charge, only his personal authority. That's still not enough. He believes the sealed cradle concerns an heir. Ronan went completely still. For the first time since she arrived, his expression lost its practiced neutrality. What sealed cradle? Evelyne did not answer immediately. Ronan leaned forward. You brought royal succession into my territory and failed to mention it. I brought myself into your territory, and Crownfang trackers followed you. His voice hardened. Do not play wording games with me. Evelyne's temper flashed. Then don't pretend you're protecting Ironcrest from uncertainty. You already know Kael won't invade. You, Kael. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Why? Because if he crosses the treaty line without council authorization, 3 neutral packs suspend military support automatically. Silence. Ronan glanced at the accord again. Evelyne continued. You signed that clause. I remember. Then you also remember who insisted on it. His gaze returned to her. You. Yes. A knock interrupted them. Captain Jude entered. Alpha. His face was tight. Crownfang trackers pulled back. Ronan's shoulders eased slightly. Jude continued. But we have another problem. He placed a wet dispatch on the table. North Road collapsed near Hollow Creek. Mudslide took out the main supply pass. Ronan stood. How bad? Bad enough that the grain convoy can't get through. How much food is at Northhold? Jude hesitated. 4 days. Evelyne looked toward the wall map. Ronan noticed. What? She pushed herself upright. Pain shot through her stitched calf. She ignored it and crossed toward the map. 3 supply routes had been marked in black ink. The northern one ended at the washed-out pass. The eastern cut? Jude shook his head. Too narrow for wagons. The old quarry road? Abandoned. Why? Rockfall, 2 winters ago. Evelyne studied the contour lines. How much of the road was lost? Jude looked at Ronan before answering. Maybe half a mile. And the lower ridge? Steep. Not for empty wagons. Ronan moved beside her. You have something. Evelyne pointed to Hollow Creek. Split the convoy. Jude frowned. Into what? Unload the grain here. Use pack mules across the eastern cut. Send the empty wagons south around the lower ridge. Then reload at Greystone. That adds almost a day. Better than losing 4. Jude crossed his arms. The lower ridge freezes after sunset. Then don't send them after sunset. The answer came flat and immediate. Jude blinked. Evelyne traced another line. Move before dawn. Put your strongest drivers on the southern descent. Send 2 patrol units ahead to clear ice. No torches near the quarry wall. Why? Heat against wet, fractured stone can loosen surface rock. Ronan stared at the map. How do you know this road? Evelyne looked at him. I reviewed Ironcrest logistics before negotiating your treaty. That was 3 years ago. I remember useful things. Something changed in Ronan's face. Not admiration. Not yet. Recognition. He looked at Jude. Can it work? Jude studied the route for several seconds. It can. Risk. High. Evelyne answered, before Ronan could. Lower than hunger. The room went quiet. Ronan turned toward her. If we follow your plan, and it fails, Northhold, Bracken Village, and Hollow Creek will have no grain before the next moon. I know. And if it succeeds, you gain a secondary winter route you should have mapped 2 years ago. Jude made a sound suspiciously close to a cough. Ronan's mouth twitched. Evelyne noticed. Barely. Was that criticism? He asked. It was free consultation. Expensive attitude for someone requesting sanctuary. Then consider it a trial period. For the first time, a short laugh escaped Jude. Ronan did not laugh, but his eyes warmed by half a degree. Then he folded the dispatch. 24 hours. Evelyne's expression hardened. Ronan continued. Your sanctuary remains provisional until I see whether your judgment is intact. You're tying my legal protection to a grain convoy. I'm determining whether the woman standing in my war room is the strategist who wrote this treaty or a wounded Luna running on anger. The words landed where he intended. Evelyne went very still. Her deepest exhaustion was not physical. It was the constant need to prove that betrayal had not broken the part of her everyone relied upon. She looked back at the map. Send the convoy. Ronan nodded to Jude. Do it. Jude left at once. Evelyne remained beside the table. The bond pulsed painfully beneath her ribs again. Kael was still there, still reaching, still pulling. Ronan noticed the slight tremor in her hand. He said nothing about it. Instead, he moved a chair closer. Sit, before you tear your stitches. I'm fine. That wasn't a question. She gave him a tired look. You sound like Kael. Ronan's face changed instantly. Then I withdraw the order. That almost made her smile. Almost. She sat. Outside, horns sounded in the courtyard as riders began preparing the rerouted convoy. Ronan walked to the window. You understand what happens if this fails. Yes. 3 villages. Yes. Hundreds of wolves. Evelyne watched the rain streak down the glass. I know what hunger costs. Ronan turned. For the first time, he looked at her not as Kael Arden's Luna, not as a political liability, and not as a woman asking refuge. He looked at her as someone whose decision might determine whether his people ate. Far below, the first grain wagons rolled into the darkness. Evelyne closed her fingers around the edge of the chair. There was nothing left to do now but wait for the consequences of her own judgment. If she had miscalculated the mountain, 3 Ironcrest villages would begin starving before the next moon. The first wagon reached Northhold 23 minutes before dawn. Captain Jude Mercer rode into Ironcrest Keep with mud to his knees and ice crusted along the shoulders of his coat. Evelyne was still in the war room. She had not slept. Neither had Ronan. Maps covered the table between them, held flat beneath knives, ink bottles, and 2 untouched cups of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Jude pushed through the door. It worked. Evelyne looked up. For the first time that night, the tension in her shoulders loosened. All 3 villages. Northhold has grain. Bracken is unloading now. Hollow Creek will have theirs before noon. Ronan's gaze stayed on Evelyne, not on Jude, not on the map, on her. Jude removed his gloves and dropped them beside the fire. We lost one wagon wheel on the lower ridge. No injuries, no grain lost. Evelyne exhaled slowly. Good. Jude gave her a strange look. That's all? What would you prefer? I don't know. A victory speech? Evelyne leaned back in her chair. I'm too tired to become inspirational. Jude laughed. This time Ronan did too. It was brief, low, and gone almost immediately, but the sound changed the room. Ronan walked to the map and placed one finger over the lower ridge route Evelyne had chosen. You created a secondary winter supply line in less than an hour. I found one. No. He shook his head. My people knew that road existed. None of us saw how to use it. Evelyne said nothing. Praise had always made her uncomfortable, especially when it came after people had doubted her. Ronan straightened. Your sanctuary is approved. Her eyes lifted. Formally? Formally. He took a folded document from inside his coat and placed it before her. Iron Crest seal. Alpha signature. Border sanctuary protection. Evelyne read every line. Ronan noticed. You think I'd hide something in the small print? Yes. His eyebrows rose. Charming. I spent 5 years reading council contracts. That explains the trust issues. That and recent events. Ronan's expression sobered. He did not apologize for the joke. He simply let the silence settle. Evelyne signed. For the first time since leaving Crownfang, there was a law between her and Kael. Not a memory. Not a promise. A law. Ronan stamped the page. Welcome to Ironcrest. She touched the edge of the parchment. Temporarily. Ronan studied her for a second. If that makes you feel safer. It makes me accurate. Before he could answer, a horn sounded from the courtyard. One long blast, then 2 short. Jude's expression changed. Royal messenger. Ronan's face hardened. They reached the courtyard moments later. Snow had begun to fall, soft and dry, dusting the black stone walls. A Crownfang rider waited inside the outer gate beneath heavy guard. He wore the silver-black crest of Kael's household. Evelyne recognized him. Sir Adrian Cole, one of Kael's personal envoys. His eyes found her immediately. Relief flashed across his face. Then caution. He dismounted and bowed. Luna Evelyne. Ronan's voice cut across the courtyard. She is under Ironcrest Sanctuary. Adrian looked at him. I came to deliver a royal summons. Then deliver it. Adrian removed a sealed document from his coat. The wax carried Kael's personal mark. Evelyne did not reach for it. Read it. Adrian hesitated. It is addressed to you privately. I have had enough private decisions made around me. Ronan said nothing. Neither did Jude. Adrian broke the seal. His voice carried farther than he intended. By order of Alpha King Kael Arden, Luna Evelyne Arden is commanded to return to Crownfang Palace immediately due to matters concerning royal succession, the protection of a potential heir, and the stability of the Crownfang throne. Evelyne felt every Ironcrest warrior in the courtyard listening. One word mattered more than the rest. Commanded. She looked at Adrian. Did he write that? Yes. Exactly that? Adrian's jaw tightened. Yes. The bond beneath her ribs pulsed. Kael, still reaching for authority when apology had failed. Evelyne almost admired the consistency. Ronan held out his hand. Adrian reluctantly gave him the summons. Ronan read it once, then turned it over. No council authorization. Adrian stiffened. The Alpha King does not require. For entry into Ironcrest to retrieve someone under sanctuary law he does. Ronan folded the document neatly. Your king knows that. He believes Lady Evelyne may be withholding information concerning an heir. Evelyne finally spoke. And therefore, my rights disappear? I didn't say that. No, Kael did. Adrian lowered his voice. He hasn't slept. The sentence hit somewhere Evelyne did not want touched. She remembered Kael, after battle campaigns, refusing sleep until every wounded soldier had been accounted for. She remembered sitting beside him while he read reports at sunrise. For one brief, treacherous second, concern rose. Then she remembered Lyssandra walking from his bedroom. Evelyne pushed the feeling down. His exhaustion is not my emergency. Adrian looked pained. He believes you left the cradle because you're carrying his child. The courtyard went very still. Ronan's eyes shifted toward her. Evelyne's expression did not change. I'm not pregnant. Adrian stared. You're certain? Her gaze sharpened. I am 34 years old, not confused about the contents of my own body. A few warriors abruptly found the snow fascinating. Adrian swallowed. Then what does the cradle mean? That is not information Kael earns by sending a command. Ronan handed the summons back. Tell Alpha King Arden that Ironcrest recognizes Evelyne's sanctuary protection. Adrian took the paper. And if he refuses? Ronan's face became unreadable. Then he may challenge the law he helped ratify. Adrian looked from Ronan to Evelyne. You understand what this could become. Evelyne did. A political fracture. Possibly worse. But she had spent too many years preventing consequences for powerful men. I understand exactly. Adrian left before noon. By evening, Kael had received the answer. He stood alone in Evelyne's former office. Her shelves were half empty. The military maps she kept rolled beside the Western cabinet were gone. So were her private treaty notes. On the desk sat 3 unsigned shipping approvals, a grain allocation report, 2 unresolved border petitions. Things Kael had never seen because Evelyne handled them before they reached him. Beta Mason stood near the door. The southern convoy is delayed. Why? They're waiting for revised weight authorization. Who approves that? Mason was silent. Kael looked at him. Who? Evelyne did. Kael's jaw tightened. Then have the quartermaster do it. He already tried. And he used last winter's figures. Kael looked at the report. They're wrong. Yes. How wrong? Enough to leave Greyhaven short for 6 days. Kael slowly sat in Evelyne's chair. The room smelled faintly of her. Paper, cheddar oil, lavender soap. He looked at the untouched work spreading across the desk. One day, she had been gone one day, and already, small fractures were appearing everywhere. Mason placed another ledger in front of him. There's more. Kael looked up. 3 neutral pacts are refusing to renew transport guarantees until Evelyne's severance status is clarified. Why would her marriage affect trade? Mason hesitated. Because she negotiated the guarantees personally. Kael stared at him. Mason lowered his voice. They trust her signature. Something cold settled beneath Kael's ribs. He had thought Evelyne stood beside his throne. He had never considered how much of the throne stood because of her. Across the room, the sealed cradle sat beneath guard. The royal wax had cracked further. A second hairline fracture spread across the lid. Kael rose. Slowly, he approached it. This time, he did not touch the seal. He simply stared. Behind him, Mason spoke quietly. My king. Perhaps commanding her back was not the right move. Kael's face hardened. Before he could answer, a sharp sound came from the cradle. Crack. The silver thread loosened by half an inch. Kael froze. A thin strip of parchment slid from beneath the lid and fell to the floor. He bent and picked it up. There was only one line written across it. Not in Evelyne's handwriting. A man's. Kael read it twice. His blood ran cold. If the cradle opens without her, the child dies. Kael read the warning for the 4th time. If the cradle opens without her, the child dies. The words had been written in dark brown ink, the strokes compressed and hurried, as if whoever wrote them had expected to be interrupted. Beta Mason stood across the room. Neither man spoke. Outside Evelyne's former office, Crownfang Palace was beginning to wake. Servants crossed distant corridors. Guards changed shifts. Somewhere below, a bell announced the morning ration count. Ordinary sounds. Kael hated them. Nothing felt ordinary anymore. Have the handwriting compared, he said. Mason nodded. To whose? Everyone. That may take days. Then make it take hours. Mason took the note. Kael turned toward Evelyne's desk. 3 ledgers remained open where the quartermaster had abandoned them overnight. He had spent most of the night trying to understand the system she had used. Colored tabs. Small symbols. Cross-referenced shipping routes. One thin black mark beside a grain contract meant something different from the same mark beside a military requisition. Kael had ruled Crownfang for 11 years. He could command 10,000 wolves into battle. He could not explain his own kingdom's winter freight schedule. The humiliation sat badly on him. A knock came at the door. Quartermaster Vance entered looking exhausted. My king. What now? The Western Mills refuse release. Kael closed his eyes for 1 second. Why? They say their contract requires Luna authorization if the emergency reserves fall below 30%. Then use my seal. We tried. Kael's eyes opened. Vance swallowed. The contract was negotiated under joint Crown authority. Mason looked toward the desk. Kael's jaw flexed. Meaning your seal alone cannot override hers. Silence spread through the room. Kael stared at the documents. He remembered signing them. Evelyne had explained the clause. He had been reading a military report at the time. He had told her he trusted her judgment. At the time, those words had sounded generous. Now, they sounded lazy. Find a legal workaround. Vance nodded quickly and left. Mason remained. Kael looked at him. Say it. Mason hesitated. You asked. Say it. Mason set the Cradle note down. You didn't know how much she was doing. The sentence landed cleanly. Kael did not argue. That was worse. At Ironcrest, Evelyne sat in the archive room, with her stitched leg elevated on a wooden stool. Ronan had given her access to the kingdom's old border records that morning. Not because she asked. Because she had found something in Crownfang's trade pattern that bothered her. A payment repeated every 3 months. Always small enough to disappear inside military medicine budgets. Always routed through neutral territory. Evelyne ran one finger down the copied ledger. Ronan stood beside the shelves. Still think it's random? No. What is it? I don't know yet. That sounded painful for you. She looked up. Not knowing something? Yes. Deeply. The corner of Ronan's mouth moved. Evelyne returned to the ledger. 7 years of payments. Same amount adjusted for inflation. Same intermediary account. Different destination codes. She pulled another ledger closer. Who owns the clearinghouse at Westmarch? Ronan thought for a moment. Neutral healers. Not merchants? No. Her hand stopped. Healers. She read the destination code again. Wem, ha, eins, vier. Ronan leaned over the table. What? Evelyne's pulse had changed. These payments began 3 months after Lyssandra was declared dead. Ronan's expression sharpened. You think Crownfang was paying to keep her alive? No. Evelyne looked at the figures. If Kael knew she was alive, he wouldn't have spent 7 years believing she was dead. Counsel? Possibly. She reached for another volume. If someone wanted to hide medical care, they'd bury the cost under battlefield supplies. Ronan watched her work. Not interrupting. Not helping unless asked. Evelyne noticed the difference. Kael had often told her to handle things because he trusted her. Ronan watched because he wanted to understand how she arrived at the answer. It should not have mattered. It did. A runner entered. Alpha, riders from Northold. Ronan looked over. Problem? No. They brought the final convoy count. The young wolf handed him the sheet. Ronan read it, then passed it to Evelyne. Every shipment accounted for. No losses. At the bottom, Captain Jude had written one sentence. Secondary route viable for winter use. Evelyne handed it back. Ronan did not take it. That route is yours. It belongs to Ironcrest. You found it. I pointed at a map. You prevented hunger. Evelyne looked at him. There was no flirtation in his face. No exaggerated gratitude. Only acknowledgement. It unsettled her, more than charm would have. Before she could answer, pain tore through the mate bond. Her breath caught. The ledger slipped from her fingers. Ronan moved instinctively, then stopped before touching her. Kael? Evelyne pressed a fist against her chest. Yes. The sensation carried confusion, frustration, and something heavier. Shame. She almost laughed at the cruelty of it. The bond had never delivered his regret when she needed it. Now it gave her pieces of it when she wanted none. I'm fine. Ronan looked unconvinced. You keep saying that. It saves time. He picked up the fallen ledger. A folded scrap of paper slid from between the pages. Both of them looked down. Evelyne reached it first. The paper was old. 7 years old, judging from the yellowed edge. A routing receipt. Westmarch Healer House. Patient identification had been deliberately blacked out, but the receiving physician's name remained. Mara Quinn. Evelyne knew that name. She sat straighter. Mara Quinn was a battlefield healer during the Northern Rebellion. Ronan nodded. She retired. Where? Westmarch. Evelyne looked at the receipt again. One line at the bottom had escaped, the black ink. Postnatal observation. Her fingers went cold. Ronan saw it too. That means someone gave birth. Yes. Lyssandra? I don't know. But Evelyne's instincts were already tightening around the possibility. 7 years of hidden medical payments. A woman declared dead. A sealed cradle. A warning about a child. The pieces were no longer scattered. They were beginning to lean toward one another. Back at Crownfang, Kael stood inside the council chamber, while Elder Garrick Vale argued that trade disruption was temporary. Garrick's silver hair was perfectly combed. His voice remained irritatingly calm. The kingdom survived before Evelyne became Luna. Kael stared at him. Did it? Garrick paused. Kael tossed 3 failed transport reports onto the table. Because in 48 hours, I have learned that she personally maintained 5 trade guarantees, 2 ration protocols, and 4 border arbitration agreements. No one here can explain. One elder shifted uncomfortably. Garrick's expression cooled. You sound sentimental. Kael leaned forward. No, I sound uninformed. That silenced them. For once, Kael did not protect his pride. He looked around the table, and I intend to find out why. Mason entered without being announced. He carried a thin file. Kael saw his face and stood. What? We traced the handwriting. Garrick's eyes flickered. Small, almost invisible. Kael noticed. Mason placed the file on the table. The note from the Cradle matches, archived field reports, from Commander Theron Hale. The room changed. Kael started. Theron Hale had died 7 years ago, the same week as Lyssandra. Garrick rose too quickly. That is impossible. Mason looked at him. Is it? Kael slowly turned toward Garrick. For the first time, the old councilman looked afraid. Far away in Ironcrest, Evelyne folded the Westmarch receipt and slid it into her coat. She looked at Ronan. I need to find Mara Quinn. Ronan nodded once. I'll arrange an escort. No royal colors. You're not royal here. The answer landed strangely soft. Evelyne stood, despite the pain in her leg. Ronan looked at the hidden medical payment again. Whatever happened 7 years ago, it didn't end when Lyssandra came back. No, Evelyne's gaze hardened. It started long before she returned. She turned toward the door. Behind her, Ronan picked up the final ledger and frowned. There was another entry beneath the healer payments. A second name. Not Lyssandra. Not Theron. A child registration code. He called after her. Evelyne. She stopped. Ronan held up the page. His voice had lost all warmth. There's more. She walked back. At the bottom of the record was one line that made her forget the pain in her chest entirely. Patient. Lyssandra Vale. Status. Postnatal. Male child delivered alive. Mara Quinn's healer house stood at the edge of Westmarch, beneath a row of wind-bent cedar trees. It was smaller than Evelyne expected. No guards. No royal insignia. Just a weather-darkened building with smoke rising from a crooked chimney and dried herbs hanging beneath the porch roof. Ronan stopped beside her at the gate. You're sure you want to do this today? Evelyne glanced at her stitched calf. No. He waited. She pushed the gate open. That has never been the same as not doing it. The front door opened before they reached the porch. A gray-haired woman stepped outside holding a silver-tipped cane. Mara Quinn was 58, broad-shouldered despite her age, with sharp green eyes that moved first to Ronan and then to Evelyne. Her face lost color. Crownfang. Evelyne stopped. I'm not here, under Crownfang authority. Mara looked at Ronan. Ironcrest Alpha. Ronan inclined his head. We need 5 minutes. No. Mara turned toward the door. Evelyne spoke, before it closed. Lyssandra Vale delivered a son here 7 years ago. Mara froze. The wind moved through the cedar branches. Nothing else did. Evelyne pulled the copied ledger page from her coat. Council payments. Postnatal care. A living male child. Mara did not turn around. Burn that. Why? Because people died for less. Evelyne's voice stayed level. People already died. That made Mara look back. Evelyne held her gaze. Commander Theron Hale, for one. Something flickered across Mara's face. Fear. Not surprise. Evelyne saw it. He's alive, isn't he? Mara's fingers tightened around the cane. Ronan shifted slightly beside Evelyne. Not threatening. Ready. Mara looked toward the road, then stepped aside. Inside, the healer house smelled of rosemary, alcohol, and old smoke. Mara locked the door behind them. She led them into a narrow examination room lined with glass bottles and faded medical texts. Evelyne remained standing. Tell me about the child. Mara gave a humorless laugh. You came directly to the blade. I'm tired of people handing me handles. Mara studied her, then sat. Lyssandra arrived here 7 years ago, under another name. With Theron? No. Evelyne's stomach tightened. Then who brought her? Mara hesitated. Council guards. Ronan's expression hardened. They told me she was a protected witness, injured during a rogue attack. And you believed them? I was a battlefield healer. I believed paperwork. Mara's mouth twisted. I learned. She opened a drawer and removed an old metal box. Inside were folded treatment records. Real onus, not copies. Mara laid one on the table. Lyssandra was 5 months pregnant when she arrived. Evelyne looked at the date. 3 weeks after Lyssandra's supposed death. Was she injured? Drugged? Malnourished? Frightened? Did she know she was pregnant? Yes. Ronan asked quietly. Did she name the father? Mara nodded. Theron Hale. The room went still. Evelyne looked down at the paper again. Not Kael. Tyrone. The first major piece clicked into place. Were they together before the attack? Mara shook her head. Not before. That answer surprised her. Mara continued. Lyssandra said she woke after the ambush with fractured memories. She remembered Kael. She remembered Crownfang, but not the months immediately before she was brought here. Evelyne frowned. Then how did Theron become the father? Mara's eyes darkened. Because Lyssandra wasn't hidden for one night. She leaned forward. She was kept moving for months. The child had been conceived during that period. Mara explained that Theron had been assigned to protect Lyssandra after the original attack. Somewhere between safe houses, injuries, fear, and isolation, they had become close. Then council forces separated them. Theron disappeared. Lyssandra was told he had died. Again, Evelyne closed her eyes briefly. 2 dead men, 2 false graves. 1 woman moved around like a political package. What happened after the birth? Mara looked toward the locked cabinet beside the wall. The child was healthy. A boy? Yes. Where is he? Mara's face tightened. I don't know. Evelyne's voice sharpened. You delivered him. I delivered him. I did not keep him. Mara reached for another file. 3 hours after birth, council guards arrived. Ronan swore under his breath. They took a newborn? They told Lyssandra the child had stopped breathing. Evelyne stared at her. But he hadn't. No. Did Lyssandra know? She was sedated. Mara swallowed. When she woke, the cradle was empty. There it was. The word hit Evelyne harder than she expected. Cradle. She thought of the ashwood box sitting beneath guard in Crownfang Palace. Was it the same cradle? Mara looked at her sharply. What cradle? Evelyne described the black ashwood, silver thread, royal wax. Mara's face drained. Oh, goddess. Ronan leaned forward. You recognize it. Mara nodded slowly. That cradle was brought here before the delivery. By whom? I never saw his face. Man or woman? Man. Evelyne's pulse quickened. Theron? I don't know. Mara opened another envelope. Inside was a strip of parchment. A signature had been scratched away, but the handwriting remained. Evelyne knew what she was looking at before Ronan said it. Same compressed strokes. Same angle. The same hand that had written the warning from the sealed cradle. Theron Hale. Mara whispered. He knew the child would be taken. Evelyne's breath slowed. So, he prepared Air Sanctuary. He tried. Mara looked sick. But he vanished before he could complete the protection. Ronan asked, why would council steal Lyssandra's child? Mara did not answer immediately. Then she looked at Evelyne. Bloodline. The room seemed to narrow. Theron wasn't only a commander, Mara said. He was the last surviving male of the Hale war line. Lyssandra carried Vale Council blood. Evelyne understood. A son born from both bloodlines could challenge succession alliances, or be used to create one. Mara's voice dropped. Whoever controls that boy controls 2 old houses. Evelyne stepped away from the table. The affair no longer sat alone in her mind. It had roots. Ugly ones. Still, none of those roots reached into Kael's bedroom and made his decision for him. The door behind them opened suddenly. Everyone turned. A man stood in the hallway. Lean, scarred, older than the portrait hanging in Crownfang's memorial hall, but unmistakable. Mara stopped breathing. Ronan moved between Evelyne and the stranger. The man lifted both empty hands. Evelyne stared at his face. Commander, Theron Hale, alive. His eyes moved to the medical file on the table, then to Evelyne. His voice cracked. "Where is my son?" And for the second time in 7 years, Crownfang's dead had started walking back into the living world. Theron Hale looked less like a ghost up close. Ghosts were cleaner. The man standing in Mara Quinn's narrow hallway had a scar splitting his right eyebrow, another disappearing beneath the collar of his coat, and the hollow look of someone who had survived by refusing to die for reasons no one else understood. Ronan stayed between him and Evelyne. Theron noticed. "If I meant her harm, Alpha, you would already know." Ronan's expression did not change. "I prefer knowing before." Theron almost smiled. Almost. Then his attention returned to Evelyne. "You found the records?" "Yes." "My son?" "Taken alive." Theron closed his eyes. For 1 second the hard control left his face. His shoulders dropped. His hand gripped the doorframe so tightly the old wood creaked beneath his fingers. Mara stepped toward him. "Theron, you told me they killed him." Her voice broke. "I believe they had." Theron looked at her. "I came back 3 days later." Mara went still. "I know." Evelyne's eyes moved between them. "You've seen each other since?" Mara nodded. "Twice." Ronan's voice sharpened. "And neither of you thought telling Crownfang might be useful?" Theron gave him a flat look. "Crownfang buried me." That ended the argument. Evelyne stepped closer to the table. "Start at the beginning." Theron glanced at her. "You always did give orders like you owned the room." "I'm injured, exhausted, and missing breakfast. Don't make me improve my tone." That earned the faintest breath of amusement from Ronan. Theron sat. 7 years earlier, Lyssandra's convoy had never been attacked by rogues. It had been intercepted by council soldiers wearing stolen rogue insignia. The plan had been simple: remove Lyssandra from Kael's reach. At the time, Kael had not yet become secure enough on the throne. Elder Garrick Vale feared his daughter's mating with Kael would bind the Vale bloodline too closely to royal power and reduce the council's leverage. So Lyssandra had been declared dead. Theron, assigned to recover survivors, discovered her alive. "I should have taken her straight back," he said. "Why didn't you?" Evelyne asked. "Because the first patrol I contacted tried to kill us both." The room fell quiet. Theron looked toward the rain-streaked window. "I understood then." He moved Lyssandra between abandoned outposts and border safe houses. Her memory came and went. She remembered Kael in fragments. She remembered her father clearly. She trusted Theron because he was the only person who never lied about what he knew. Months passed. They became close. Then council hunters found them. Theron was captured. Lyssandra was taken to Westmarch. "And she thought you were dead," Evelyne said. "Yes." Again. Theron's mouth hardened. "They are very committed to funerals." Ronan's eyes cooled. "And the child?" Theron looked down at his hands. "I learned about the pregnancy while imprisoned." "How?" A sympathetic guard. He reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a thin chain. Attached to it was a small, silver disc. A bloodline token. Hale line. Evelyne recognized the mark. "I knew what a Vale Hale son would mean to the council." "A bargaining heir," Ronan said. "A weapon," Theron corrected. He had escaped 2 weeks before Lyssandra gave birth. By then, Westmarch was heavily guarded. He could not reach her. So he prepared the Ashwood Cradle, heir sanctuary, an ancient protection normally reserved for disputed royal children. If activated correctly, Theron explained, the cradle binds the child's legal identity to the guardian named in the seal. Evelyne's stomach tightened. "Who did you name?" Theron looked directly at her. "You." For the first time since entering Mara's house, Evelyne had no immediate answer. Ronan turned toward her. Mara looked equally stunned. Evelyne stared at Theron. 7 years ago, I wasn't Luna." "No, you barely knew me. I knew your work. That is not enough to hand me a child. It was enough to know you hated the council. I negotiated with them. You beat them 3 times. Despite herself, Evelyne remembered. Theron continued. "You were one of the few wolves in Crownfang without a bloodline claim on the boy. That made you safer than anyone royal." Evelyne looked at the old medical records. "But the protection wasn't completed. I was captured again before I could deliver the final seal. So why did the cradle appear now?" Theron's expression darkened. "Because someone found it." Ronan leaned forward. "Who?" "I don't know." Theron reached into his coat and pulled out a folded page. "A recent transport manifest. Crownfang Palace. Lower nursery storage." Evelyne took it. Her pulse slowed. The cradle had been inside the palace for 6 years. Hidden, catalogued under ceremonial furniture. No one understood what it was. Until now. Someone moved it the night I left, Evelyne said. Yes. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Convenient. No, Evelyne said quietly. Deliberate. The sealed cradle had not been left for Kael by her. Someone had placed it there after she walked away. Someone who knew Kael would believe it belonged to Evelyne. Someone who wanted panic around an heir. Theron looked at her, and whoever moved it knew the old protection would react to you. The room felt colder. Evelyne folded the manifest. Then the council didn't just manipulate Lyssandra. No, Theron said. They manipulated Kael into thinking the cradle was yours. Ronan's jaw tightened. To force him to bring you back. Evelyne understood. If Kael believed she carried or concealed his heir, grief would become urgency. Urgency would become royal force. And royal force crossing Ironcrest borders could fracture the treaty network. One betrayal, one false heir, one border crisis, enough to destabilize 3 packs at once. Evelyne looked toward Theron. Where is the child now? He was silent too long. Her voice sharpened. Theron, I found a registration trail. He pulled another document from his coat. A school census from Crownfang's Eastern District. One boy, 7 years old. No listed father. Adoptive guardian. Council steward. Malcolm Vey. Mara whispered, he's inside Crownfang. Theron nodded. Under another name. Ronan stared at the document. They kept him under Kael's nose. Because nobody searches the center of a fortress for someone supposedly dead. Evelyne said. Theron looked at her. I need to get him out. You will. He studied her face. You sound certain. I am. Ronan turned toward Evelyne. You're considering going back. She looked at him. Not as Luna. Not as Kael's mate. As the woman who had spent years understanding exactly where Crownfang law bent and where it broke. If we extract the child quietly, Council buries the trail. So? So we don't extract him quietly. Theron's eyes sharpened. Evelyne placed the school census beside the medical record. We put everything before the packs. Mara looked frightened. A public accusation. A pack trial. Ronan's expression became thoughtful. Evelyne continued. Medical records, council payments, Theron alive, the child alive, the cradle, the false deaths. And Kael? Ronan asked. Her face changed. Only slightly. He will answer for his part too. Ronan watched her. You know the council will try to turn this into your marriage. They can try. What if Kael asks you to return before the trial? Evelyne slipped the documents into her coat. Then he can ask. Theron stood. What do you need from me? The truth. I have that. Good. She headed toward the door. Ronan followed. Outside, the rain had stopped. A hard white moon hung over Westmarch, lighting the road east toward Ironcrest and west toward Crownfang. Evelyne looked west. For days, she had been running away from that direction. Now she chose it. Not because the bond called. Not because Kael regretted anything. Because a child had been hidden inside her kingdom, and powerful people had built graves around the truth. Ronan came to stand beside her. You're going back. Evelyne's hand settled briefly over the folded Luna ring hidden inside her coat. No. She looked toward Crownfang. I'm returning. There was a difference. A large one. By sunrise, messengers were already riding toward the neutral packs, carrying formal notices under Ironcrest's seal. Pack trial requested. Royal Council subject to testimony. Heir sanctuary evidence to be presented. And in Crownfang Palace, Kael read Evelyne's name at the bottom of the notice. Not as Luna, not as mate. As petitioner, his wolf went utterly still. Evelyne Arden was coming home, but she was bringing witnesses, law, and a dead commander with her. The Great Hall had not held that many alpha bloodlines in one room for nearly a decade. By noon, every gallery was full. Pack leaders stood beneath carved stone banners. Council representatives occupied the eastern benches. Royal guards lined the walls in formal black. At the center of the hall sat the sealed cradle. Dark ashwood, silver thread, cracked royal wax. The object looked almost small beneath the vaulted ceiling. Evelyne knew better. That cradle had already destabilized a marriage, a kingdom, and 7 years of lies. She entered through the western doors beside Ronan. Theron walked behind them. The reaction was immediate. Gasps. Whispers. One elder stood so quickly his chair scraped hard across the stone. Theron Hale. Theron did not look at him. His eyes found Kael instead. The Alpha King sat at the head of the trial dais. He wore no crown. That surprised Evelyne. Their mate bond reacted before she did. A hard pull beneath her ribs. Kael felt it too. She saw it in the slight tightening of his hand around the armrest. His gaze moved over her face, then down to the healing stiffness in her right leg. He almost stood. He stopped himself. Good. This was not a reunion. Ronan guided Evelyne toward the petitioner's table. No touch. No claim. Only presence. Across the hall, Lyssandra sat beside healer Mara Quinn. She looked pale, older somehow. The woman who had stepped from Kael's bedroom days earlier had been carrying a secret heavy enough to hollow her out. Elder Garrick Vale rose. This spectacle is unlawful. Evelyne opened the trial ledger. No, her voice carried easily. You approved the statute yourself 14 years ago. Garrick's mouth tightened. The Heir Sanctuary Code applies only to recognized blood claims. Theron spoke for the first time. My son is recognized by mine. The hall erupted. Kael slammed one palm against the dais. Silence. The Alpha Command rolled through the chamber. This time, Evelyne did not flinch. The trial began with records, not accusations. That had been her insistence. Mara placed the original medical file on the evidence table. Patient, Lyssandra Vale. Admitted under false identity. Pregnancy confirmed. Male child delivered alive. Garrick scoffed. A healer's private record proves nothing about council involvement. Mara turned the page. Then perhaps the council payment authorizations will. Beta Mason stepped forward with 7 years of financial ledgers. Kael's eyes hardened as each quarterly payment was read aloud. Same account. Same healer house. Council treasury. Garrick's defense changed. He no longer denied the payments. He called them protective expenses. Theron laughed once. A cold sound. You protected her by declaring her dead? Garrick looked at him. You were unstable. I was inconvenient. The hall murmured again. Evelyne placed the transport manifest beside the medical records. The cradle was stored beneath Crownfang Palace for 6 years. Kael's attention snapped toward her. He had not known that part. Who authorized storage? He asked. Mason checked the ledger. Council Steward Malcolm Vey. Garrick's expression shifted. Small. There. Evelyne saw it. So did he authorize moving it the night I left? She asked. Garrick said nothing. Kael turned toward him. Answer her. Garrick's jaw tightened. I do not answer to a discarded Luna. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. Kael rose. Slowly. You will not call her that again. Evelyne looked at him. He did not look back. For the first time his defense of her cost him something public. It changed nothing. But she noticed. Theron stepped toward the cradle. The original Heir Sanctuary required a guardian. He looked at Evelyne. I named her. Another wave of whispers. Ronan remained still beside the petitioner's table. Garrick seized on it. Convenient. A rival Alpha shelters the king's estranged Luna, and suddenly she is guardian to a hidden bloodline. Ronan's eyes turned cold. Evelyne spoke before he could. Then, remove Ronan from the equation. Garrick blinked. She faced the hall. I request oath memory. The room changed. Even Kael stiffened. Oath memory was old law. Dangerous law. A sworn wolf could submit a blood-marked memory before neutral alphas. False testimony under oath, memory, could permanently damage the wolf's ability to shift. Garrick's face lost color. Evelyne noticed that too. Theron stepped forward. I'll submit. Mara followed. So will I. Lyssandra stood. Her knees trembled. I will too. Kael looked at her. Lyssandra met his gaze. Pain passed between them. Not romance. Something more exhausted. She moved to the oath stone. Silver light spread beneath her palm. The hall watched the memory form across the polished black surface. A young Lyssandra, pregnant, terrified. Council guards. Garrick's voice. Keep her sedated. Theron must remain dead. The boy will be useful later. Someone in the gallery cursed. Lyssandra's memory shifted. A newborn cry, her weak hand reaching toward an ashwood cradle. Then darkness. When the memory ended, she was crying silently. She did not collapse. I came back because they told me my son was alive. She looked toward Evelyne. And they told me if I broke Kael's made oath, they would give him back. The hall went dead still. Kael closed his eyes. Evelyne watched him. This was the moment he could hide behind manipulation. The easy exit. Garrick tried first. You see, the king was targeted. His actions were engineered. Kael opened his eyes. No. Garrick stared at him. Kael stepped down from the dais. His voice was lower now. They engineered her return. He looked at Lyssandra. They used her child. Then he looked at Evelyne. But they did not force my choice. The words cost him. Everyone heard it. Kael continued. I knew who Lyssandra was. His jaw tightened. I knew Evelyne was my mate. No one moved. I betrayed her anyway. Evelyne felt the bond pull hard enough to hurt. She did not look away. Kael faced the hall. That guilt is mine. For the first time since the trial began, Garrick looked afraid. Then the cradle cracked. A sharp sound split through the chamber. Everyone turned. The silver thread loosened. The lid rose half an inch. Lyssandra gasped. From beyond the eastern doors came the sound of a child crying. A royal guard entered carrying a frightened 7-year-old boy. Malcolm Vey followed in chains. Lyssandra stopped breathing. The child had Theron's eyes. Her mouth trembled. No. Then, softer. My baby. She crossed the hall before anyone could stop her. The boy stared at her, confused. Lyssandra dropped to her knees. She did not touch him. Not yet. Theron stood behind her, rigid with shock. Malcolm looked toward Garrick. That single glance was enough. Kael saw it. So did Evelyne. Garrick moved first. He pointed toward Kael with shaking fury. You self-righteous fool. Guards seized him. Garrick struggled. You think you're innocent because you confessed? Kael's face hardened. Garrick laughed bitterly. You signed the council's security orders 7 years ago. Your seal moved our men. Your authority made this possible. The hall turned toward Kael. Evelyne did too. Kael went still. Garrick's smile was vicious. You may not have known what we were doing. He leaned forward against the guards. But your crown gave us the power to do it. Kael's face changed. Not anger. Recognition. And Evelyne understood the trial was not finished. Not even close. Because the conspiracy had finally reached the throne itself. For several seconds after Garrick's accusation, no one in the great hall moved. Kael stood beneath the trial dais, facing the man who had helped shape his reign and poison it at the same time. You signed the council's security orders, Garrick repeated. Kael's face had gone still. Beta Mason stepped forward with the old archive ledger. My king. Kael took it. The pages were yellowed at the edges. 7 years earlier. Emergency Transport Authority. Expanded council patrol access. Temporary detention powers during the northern unrest. All bearing Kael's royal seal. He remembered signing them. He had been 22 hours without sleep, dealing with border raids, rogue attacks, and threats against half the eastern packs. He had trusted the council to use the orders for security. They had used them to move Lyssandra, to capture Theron, to hide a child. Kael closed the ledger. I signed them. Garrick smiled. There, finally. Kael looked at him. But I did not authorize kidnapping. No. Garrick's expression sharpened. You simply gave men like me enough power that you never had to ask what we were doing. The words struck harder than an insult. Because they were partly true. Evelyne watched Kael absorb them. He did not shout. He did not threaten Garrick. For once, he did not reach for dominance to cover shame. Kael turned toward the neutral alphas. I waive royal immunity for every order bearing my seal connected to this case. The hall erupted. One council elder stood. My king, you cannot. I just did. Kael's voice cut through the noise. Every order, every transfer, every detention. He looked toward Mason. Open the royal archives. Mason bowed once. Yes, my king. Garrick's smile vanished. Kael continued. And dissolve the council's emergency authority effective immediately. Now the outrage became louder. Ronan remained beside Evelyne, watching. She understood what Kael was doing, not asking forgiveness, paying. It still did not erase what he had done to her. But it was the first price he had chosen without being forced. Across the hall, Lyssandra sat on the floor beside the 7-year-old boy. He had finally allowed her to hold his hand. Theron crouched on the other side. The child looked between them carefully. What's your name? Lyssandra asked. The boy swallowed. Ellie. Her face broke. Not loudly, not theatrically. Just enough that tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm Lyssandra. He frowned. I know. She froze. Eli looked toward Malcolm Vey. He told me you were dead. Theron closed his eyes. Lyssandra covered her mouth. For 7 years, each of them had been taught to mourn someone still breathing. Evelyne looked away. Some wounds deserved privacy, even inside a public trial. Guards removed Garrick first. He did not go quietly. You think this kingdom survives without us? Kael did not answer. Garrick twisted toward Evelyne as he passed. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Evelyne's gaze stayed calm. No, he sneered. You expect me to believe that? I wanted the truth. She looked toward the broken council benches. You made the consequences yourself. Garrick was dragged from the hall. Malcolm followed. By sunset, the remaining council members had surrendered their blood seats, pending investigation. Lyssandra formally renounced any claim to the Luna title. Theron filed recognition for Eli under Hale bloodline law, and the sealed cradle finally opened completely. Inside was no infant, no treasure, only an old guardian parchment, a silver Hale token, and the legal protection Theron had never completed. Evelyne stood over it. Her name had been written on the guardian line 7 years ago. Long before she became Luna, Ronan came to stand beside her. So the cradle was always meant to find you. She looked down. No. He glanced at her. It was meant to find someone who could say no to the crown. That answer made him smile faintly. Behind them, footsteps approached. Kael. Ronan looked at Evelyne. She nodded. He left without a word. Kael stopped several feet away. For the first time since she had known him, he seemed uncertain how close he was allowed to stand. May I speak to you? You already are. A tired breath almost became a laugh. Almost. He looked toward the cradle, then at Heir. I dissolved their authority. I heard. I opened the archives. Yes. I'm submitting every old security order to neutral review. Evelyne waited. Kael's voice dropped. I don't expect that to fix us. Good. She said nothing. He swallowed. I kept thinking if I proved the council manipulated Lyssandra, then, maybe you would be less guilty. His eyes closed briefly. Yes. Evelyne looked toward the high windows. The last light of evening had turned the snow outside pale gold. They manipulated her. Kael nodded. They manipulated your court. Yes. They manipulated the kingdom. Yes. Then Evelyne looked directly at him. But they did not make your choice for you. Kael did not defend himself. I know. That answer hurt more than she expected, because it meant the man standing before her had finally reached the same truth she had reached the morning she left. He stepped closer. Not too close. If I asked for another chance, you would be asking too soon. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. What if I ask later? Evelyne looked at him for a long moment. I don't know. The honesty surprised both of them. Kael's eyes shifted to her left hand. Bear. The ring? She reached into her coat. The Luna ring was still wrapped in dark cloth. She opened it. Silver. Moonstone. 5 years of history. Kael watched silently. Evelyne placed it inside the now open cradle. His face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. You're giving it back. No. She folded the cloth over the ring. I'm putting it somewhere it stops deciding who I am. Kael understood. That was worse. And better. He stepped back. I'm sorry, Evelyne. She believed him. That did not obligate her. I know. He left first. No command. No reaching. No promise that she would return. Outside the great hall, Ronan waited near the open gates. Snow had stopped. The road beyond Crown Fang stretched white beneath the moon. He looked at her. Where do you want to go? Evelyne glanced back once. At the throne, at the broken council seats, at Kael standing alone beneath a kingdom he now had to learn how to govern without using her as its invisible foundation. Then she looked forward. Somewhere no one needs me to be a Luna before they see me. Ronan nodded. Conveniently, I know a place. She gave him a sideways look. Was that recruitment? Possibly. Subtle. I'm working on it. A small laugh escaped her. The first real one in days. They walked through the gates, side by side. Not mates. Not lovers. Not yet anything that required a name. Behind them, inside the great hall, the sealed cradle remained open. The object that had once held a stolen child's identity now held only one thing, a Luna ring no longer being worn. And for the first time since betrayal entered her marriage, Evelyne walked toward a future no one else had chosen for her. So this is where Evelyne's story closes. If you're still here with me, then Maybe one part of her journey stayed with you. She was betrayed by the man she trusted. She was pulled into lies she never created. She was hurt deeply enough to break, but she never begged for a place beside someone who had already chosen against her. She walked away because dignity mattered more than being chosen. That doesn't mean the pain disappeared. It means she refused to let the pain make every decision for her. We can't control who disappoints us, who misunderstands us, or who decides our loyalty is something they can take for granted. What we can control is what we do next. Do we chase explanations until we lose ourselves? Or do we step back, protect what remains of our self-respect, and choose again? Evelyne didn't need revenge to prove she was strong. She needed clarity, and maybe that is the quieter kind of strength most of us understand better than we admit. If her choice spoke to you, leave one word in the comments: dignity. And if you enjoyed this story, a like, share, or subscribe would mean a lot. There are more stories waiting beyond the next moon.